Good evening and welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm your host, Joshua Solomon, and with me, as always, is JP Marzullo. How you doing, JP?
Good.
Did you miss me?
I didn't miss you.
You didn't miss me?
Not really.
You should have seen all the nasty letters I got for not being on the show last week.
That was probably my doing.
Yeah, I didn't get any at all.
said you were a
I didn't get
slacker.
none. Nobody cares if I'm here.
So, so I was up half the night, not sleeping. As my bear came back, the bear came back for the second time, and he's figured out that he doesn't understand that the gate for the fences swings.
Oh, he'll figure it out.
Well, no. What he does is he smashes it down. So
Good enough.
It's the same bear because it was done the exact same way. But at 2 o'clock in the morning, my little dog, Great Pyrenees 140-pounder, started barking at the attack bark that they have, and
Yeah.
I knew there was something in the backyard. Put the lights on, and the bear had already knocked the fence off. It was gone. But you know, that's why we live here.
Oh,
right?
you have a bear problem. What is it? Montana, Minnesota? They got an elephant problem.
Yeah,
Did you
I
guys-
saw that.
Did
That
you
was
see that?
hysterical. How do you catch an elephant that's loose on the streets, right? I mean, yeah, they from the back probably.
You can track them.
So tonight we have a good friend of mine and state representative Scott. Boy, I don't
Wow.
even know his
Oh.
name.
Wow.
Okay, I'll
There
see
he
you
is.
later, Fred. Greg Hill.
Well, we were talking about Scott.
We were
Wallace
talking about
just before
Scott,
he came
and I'm a
on,
little
so.
slowed.
That's
So
right.
welcome here. I haven't seen you for a while.
No, it's I guess
A couple of
2
years.
terms.
Yeah,
1 term.
yeah.
We were
term.
in the minority, I know.
Yeah,
last
that was
time
fun,
you were
right?
there. Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
it was a
is-
joy.
It's a different,
Yeah.
it's a different scenario in the minority.
So what committees are you on, and what areas do you represent? Tell our viewers that, and then they can.
So I am Representative Greg Hill. I live in Northfield, and I cover the town of Northfield. That's Merrimack 2. I am the chair of Legislative Administration, which is probably one of those committees that not many others pay much attention to. It really deals with just how the legislature operates and what things are doing internally. I also serve on the Transportation Committee. I'm also the chair of the School Building Authority for the state. The governor appointed me to that.
Oh, wow.
And that's coming up
All for just $100.
taxable. $100
True,
taxable.
Yeah, it's even taxable.
But you
Oh
do
my
get
God.
it before you've done anything. So,
yeah.
You
Exactly.
get good. Always
get the money
your
up
You get the
front,
money
yeah.
first.
Always
yeah.
get your money up
That's-
front.
If you want to buy a plate, that's more out of your pocket. And if you want a special tag, that's more money. And
If you want a
business
pencil,
cards.
you have to buy your own.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And I think that's part of the job. So, you know, when we go somewhere across the country at a convention or something like that, there's always 2 questions that people ask you. They either say, they will come running up and they'll say, tell this guy how much you guys make. That's the first
the
thing,
first
you know.
thing, right.
And the second thing is, tell him how many people you serve with. And you say 400 and go, how do you ever get anything done? But it's just so
works.
unusual. Well,
I think it works because in order to take that job for that amount of money, you have to want to be there. And it's a completely different world than, say, the Massachusetts legislature, where it's a job, they get paid whether they show up or not, and I mean, it's the money, right? They're there because it's their job. They don't have other jobs. People that are in our legislature are there because they want to be there, and they want to
it is true. And
get
it's,
something done.
it's amazing, I think, to have that many people run for the office, and most seats are contested, so there's actually more than 400 that are interested in
Right.
being there. I counted it up the first year. I started serving in 2010. I was in the large freshman class that came in with 140 freshmen or something.
Right, yeah.
But I counted the first year, and I figured it cost me about $40,000 to be a state rep. That was the difference between my salary the year before and the year while I was a state rep. So you do have to want to be there, I think. I think that's an excellent point. But what I tell those folks, and they say, how do you get anything done? In relation to Massachusetts, they're hiring a consultant for almost everything. we are the consultants. We have almost every issue that JP will tell you, every issue that comes up, there's somebody in that room that has either done it already or knows how to do it, and it's so we don't need consultants. We already have the expertise in the room.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's one of the things, Representative Marjorie Smith the other day, when we were talking about committees and commissions, we were trying to reduce the number of those. Commissions, the difference between them, I don't know if it's of interest, but committees are just done internally. Commissions are where you can bring in people from the outside to sit on them. And she was saying, I don't know why we need commissions. We have people here that know about everything.
There's 400 people in the legislature,
Yeah.
and out of that 400, all you got to do is watch this show, and you know that it spans every occupation that exists in this state. Lawyers, doctors, farmers,
Yep.
business owners, restaurant owners, accountants, right? Within that body, you have that skill set for pretty much any topic. And that's where people end up on their committees, right? Law enforcement committee ends
Hopefully.
up with,
Yeah,
with-
that
Hopefully.
doesn't always work that way, but
I tend to pat Speaker O'Brien on the back. He knew before we were elected what we did for a living, and he had, through his position on the House Republican Alliance, I don't remember him asking specifically, but he knew what everyone did, and once we were organized and we were ready to go, he would tap people on the shoulder and say, "This is your expertise. You be here." I've never seen it happen since with any other speakers.
he was, when I first moved up here 20 years ago now from Annapolis, he was the first person I talked to about politics. We both turned out that we both went to the same dentist in New Boston, and we were talking about.
I went to Neil Kirk's dentist, so that's maybe that's where it all comes from. Yeah.
So what happened was, he said, you need to talk to this guy, Bill O'Brien. He's a state representative, and you need to go talk to him. So I called him, and he said, that's when he had a law office downtown on the second floor. I forgot what it was under, over, doesn't matter. So I went down there, and he spent almost 3 hours with me, talking to me about what the job was, actually interviewing me to find out where I might fit in, to your point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that mentorship isn't at that level anymore. It's from guys like you. You guys have been around a while, that have been doing things. That's where they get their mentorship, if they want it.
I think it's amazing when you find out what people do in that, and I have been part of the orientation when you're bringing in the new people and trying to explain it to them. Part of that is I explained to my group last year, try to find out every single person you can how they got here. What's their story? How did they get here? I don't know if you remember Frank. I'm having trouble with his last name. He was an older gentleman, he was on the Republican side. He always had headphones on, and he would forget every once in a while that he had headphones on because his hearing was going, and he would talk out rather loudly, and people would titter, and and he was one of the guys that was a tank driver in World War II and broke through the gates into one of the prisoner of war camps, and I'm thinking,
wow,
we're kind of chuckling at him, and here his life experience is something that you should never chuckle.
Right.
Yeah.
There's more of those stories. I just heard today from Janet Wall. Do you remember Janet? Janet is a direct descendant of the Stickney family.
Oh, wow.
The whole group for Mount Washington Hotel, and never knew that until today. But it's there with 400 people. It's amazing the stories that are in there.
Yeah, it's sort of like your stories about donuts.
Yeah.
So tell that
don't know that
story. This
story.
is a great. Well, I thought he was going to be able to bring donuts, but he's working hard at the
we-
State House for me. So
we
he
have yet
brought
to
us
get
a
a
box
guest
of
to
cookies.
bring us donuts and cookies and cakes and all that stuff.
I will drop.
working
I'll
on
drop
it.
some off. The story is quick in that
son.
my son at 11, we were looking. We were going to conventions around the country, and one of them had a little donut machine, and everybody was saying, "Where are those donuts? I can smell them." Later on in the summer, he said, "What if we took some money out of my college fund and we bought one of these donut machines?" So we bought one on eBay that day, and when my wife came home, his mother came home, and we said, "We're going to Ohio on a family trip." We went out and picked up this donut machine. And before we left, he had already got a customer from Tilton Diner, the
Really?
part of the common man.
Yeah.
We didn't know how to make donuts. So we went and got it, and we bought a trailer to bring it home in, a concession trailer, and then we learned how to make donuts. Long story short, he ended up at one point being having New Hampshire's best donut out of this thing. And it ended up paying for his college and
Oh, that's great.
he was at an age, I think this part's funny, but maybe no one else does, but he would get so disgusted. We would make donuts before he would go to school and leave them at the
He
restaurants.
doesn't want donuts.
No, he hated them. But he was even more disgusted when he found out the girls used to try to come over to find out if he made donuts in the morning by sniffing him to see if so he didn't want any part of that. So
But it paid for his college education, right? Or pretty much.
it actually it did. The school he ended up going to was Olin down in Massachusetts. It's number 2 or 3 in the country for engineering,
Okay.
and their deal is they only bring in about 700 or 800 kids in a year,
Wow.
and if you're accepted, you get a 50% scholarship. So
Oh, nice.
out of a $60,000 a year, it costs us 30. So
Yeah.
it wasn't entirely the donut business that paid for it. It was that scholarship. So, but now it's paying. We're using some of the money that we set aside for his school. He's taking private pilot license.
Oh, wow.
So the donut business is still paying for fun things, I guess.
So is he taking lessons from Bob Guida?
No, but I'd love to. Bob has one heck of a plane, from what I'm told.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Is Bob a pilot?
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He did professionally
He was
for, like,
United, I think.
yeah.
No, but he teaches
Oh, yeah.
too? Huh?
He has a twin engine something up in Laconia.
Yeah, in Laconia. It's at Laconia Airport.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought I knew all of the pilots.
Oh no. That place is full of them. Kenny Weiler.
Oh, he is-
He was American, I think.
Kenny Weiler. Yeah, okay. I didn't know that. See, there you
yeah,
go.
and Len Turcott
I
still
knew- yeah,
flies.
Len, yeah. How about Menino? Not Menino, Len. There's another Len. He lives in Ringe. That's his name. He was a state rep for 1 year, and then he
Lost.
we won't-
I'm sorry,
yeah,
I
we
can't
won't.
help
That's
it.
okay. My memory bank is.
Actually, the Democrat that switched to being a Republican this year is also a pilot.
Who is that?
Matt. Last name Matt.
Boy, we're just not good with last
No,
names
no.
today.
Do you remember?
Let's hold up cards.
Well, when there's 400 people to remember.
Well, it's more than that
Oh, it's
because
more than that, because
it
that's
goes back to
That's just
10
the
years.
current 400.
We had George, Murakami,
Oh, yeah.
out of Nashua.
Yeah.
He used to say all the time when he would start talking, "I'm really good with names and I'm really good with faces. I'm just not good at putting the two of them together." So I use that frequently.
So what's going on in your committees, and what do the viewers need to know, or maybe it's probably too late to testify in any of these. It's all been done pretty much.
I think
or no?
today, I only ended up after crossover. I only ended up with 2 bills into my committee, and today was the day that I cleaned up those 2. We will do the exec
Executive.
session, and then I'll be done.
Yep.
But today's bills were on ethics, and again, this is probably the internal baseball stuff that.
Yeah.
That most people probably wouldn't be excited about, but it's dealing with when legislators should recuse. We get to the point of the fact that we are generally in another occupation or have other things. It's a hard thing to know where you're crossing that line and you are getting benefited from some of the votes that you're taking, and that's what we're trying to work on.
Going back to what we were already talking about, right? If you have legislators who have an expertise because they are in this industry, and so their expertise is being lent to the committee that they're on, but then the committee is passing something that would benefit the industry that this legislator is in, because most of these folks still have a full-time job, right? Or else they have some sort of either
some income,
self-employment or an agreement with, like Gary did. He always had an agreement with his employer that, he could be gone on legislative days. But that's the risk, right? Because it's unlike Congress or Massachusetts, where their job is the legislature, and they can say, well, I don't work in that industry anymore. I just have that knowledge.
Right.
Whereas we've got folks that are in the industry writing legislation for the industry while they're still drawing a paycheck off of that industry. So that's
exactly it, and it's sometimes a very fine line that you're walking here, or you're trying to make sure that you're there to provide that information, but where does it cross to the point that you are personally benefiting from that passage or the declination of a bill? It can work both ways. It is. It's a very hard thing, and it even gets to the point of, does it matter if is it just the legislator that we have to worry about, or is it the legislator's spouse, or is it someone that lives in the legislator's house as well?
Who could help you out with this with some information is the Pelosi family. If they might have some insight.
I'll make a note.
You did it with a straight face. Good going.
Or the Bidens.
Or the Bidens.
That might be it. No, the most, we've had in the last term, the Ethics Committee has offered 3 or 4 or 5 opinions when people have come to them and said, is this a problem? And the one that was probably the most informative is Doug Lay. Do you remember Doug?
Do.
That was he was the minority leader last. Doug has passed. But Doug was also the president of the American Federation of Teachers.
Yeah.
While he was serving on the Labor Committee and serving on the Education Committee.
Unions and education.
And this is where part of this ethics evaluation that we're doing isn't so much actual, but perceived. The face you just made when I just said those 2 things. Yeah. Well, we have to be cognizant of what the public thinks when they're,
it's perceived, right? And I firmly believe that most of the legislatures here in New Hampshire, it would really be more perceived than real, right? We haven't really had a huge problem with that type of corruption in this state yet.
No, and when you think about it, the money, our money bills deal with the budget.
Right, it's
by
paying
and large
for the legislature the legislation as opposed to handing out money to organizations.
But if we made it so that if any item was in the budget and it affected you personally, there wouldn't be anybody to vote on the budget. We would all be
right.
So we've had to build exemptions in there. If there was a broad-based tax, for instance, that would affect all of us, hence broad-based. But you can't just say, "Whoa, if you're going to get taxed, you can't vote on this bill," because there wouldn't be enough people to vote on it. So you have to kind of look at these things as the public does, but also what's fair and what still makes government work. And it is different than Massachusetts, as you say. I mean, in a lot of ways. But
I think that's the big difference. Is that this legislature has day jobs, right? And most legislatures don't. And so
It is true.
they are drawing money somewhere else than from government.
Let me tell you the one thing that makes this legislature different that most people miss. That's one of the big ones that you just mentioned, the fact that we are really a volunteer legislature. The biggest one that I think is that no matter where you are, whether you're in the majority or the minority, you still have an equal footing to pass legislation. It is remarkable to me. I have a friend in Kansas that is in the legislature there and has been for 17 years. And I see him at conventions here and there whenever we have something. And his claim to fame that opened my eyes was, he said, next year I think I'm going to have one of my bills heard. He'd been there 17 years, and he hasn't even had his bill heard in a committee.
Here. Wow.
That is enormous. The fact that, and I guess we did used to have pocket vetoes at some point, that a chairman could just not bring it up, but not in my memory. And
How does
so
that work? How does someone introduce a bill that doesn't even get consideration even in a committee?
because the chairman doesn't put it on the calendar.
That's the whole key to it, really.
It is
Is that-
remarkable.
That
Yeah.
doesn't. That's. Does that? I don't know. That just doesn't
That
seem
exists.
right to me. Like it just. If
I
if
don't
a
think it
bill
is
shows
either.
up, at the very least, it should go through a committee.
Here, even if the committee,
Is it a rule in that legislature versus ours? Like we
Yes.
can't get rid of them that way. You can't have the chairman doesn't have the authority to throw things out.
no, we're king in our room, but we can't. Every bill gets an up or down vote in the committee, and then the committee, even if it's 20-0 against you, the committee only recommends what the vote will be on the floor. So that individual has the ability, that wrote the bill, has the ability to argue it on the floor in front of 400 and explain to us why the committee got it wrong.
Right.
And it does happen.
Yeah, it
You
does.
know, 4 or 5 times a year maybe that that the committee, that
It
the
seems
floor
like a very
votes different.
frustrating situation for your friend there, where he runs for office, makes it to office, and in running for office, his constituents, he's saying, "Well, I'm going to try and do this, and I'm going to try and do this, and I want to do this for you," and he has a bill that's written based on what his constituents want, and nobody even reads the thing.
Yeah, but
That's got to be very frustrating.
I think it is, but you develop different skill sets, is what he says. He has found ways to either amend or offer an amendment on another bill that maybe have some
Portions
ideas
of what
of
he's
his
interested
or
in.
something. But it is, there are ways of getting, some of the things that you want. And again, it's his profession. So he knows how to make things
Right.
happen after that time period. And certainly his constituents understand that he's working in their interests, so they wouldn't have kept sending him back for 17 years.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that would be a very frustrating
yeah.
position to be in.
You have no doubt. Yeah,
Hey,
you have
Greg,
no doubt. Yeah.
remember you sent me some things. There was a bill you were going to put in, and you had me. We read a lot about it.
Yeah,
and
what was that?
And I don't recall. Here we go.
All right.
Isn't this a great show,
This
folks?
conversation is
Was
firing
it from
up,
Matt?
folks.
Was it from a guy named Matt? No,
I thought it had to do with ethics. I thought there
it
was
could have
something
been.
you,
Yeah, I've been working on this. Truly, I've been working on this for 3 years. There have been the chair of ethics brought it to us originally to my committee, and we held on to it and tried to amend it and kept coming back and moving things, and it would go to the floor and we'd say, it's not really ready yet, and we'll bring it back. And so it has been that long,
Yeah.
JP. I mean, we've been trying to get to the point where we're splitting the baby, trying to make it so that we're
See, I think that what some people don't understand is if you can just get a little bite to begin with, you get your foot in the door, and then you can.
Yes.
They expect you to, like when you're running, they expect you to be the one that's going to have it happen all the time, exactly how they want it. But there were a lot of times where we just got some of it, which was better than nothing.
Yes.
And especially when you're in a minority.
Well,
I mean,
and
that's
especially when it's a new product, a new proposal.
Yeah.
And not one of the annuals,
Right.
the perennials.
Yeah.
Perennials,
My freshman year, I was really lucky. I had a mentor. Mike Balboni was my chairman in education, and there was another freshman in the Senate, Jim.
All right,
Welcome
we're gonna
to the
we're
senior
coming-
show.
we're gonna-
This
we're
is
gonna
how,
start
this
having
is
a
how I
list.
go. This is my age at 65 here. I'm starting to do it. And Jim just passed away shortly. But they brought to us the education tax credit program, and my chairman said, "Go, run with it," knowing that it's very hard for two freshmen to get anything done, but then to get something as monumental as a tax credit program for school choice
Yeah.
get done. And we did, but we were freshmen and we didn't even know how hard it was going to be. So it
That's
was
probably the
somewhat of
key
an
to it.
advantage in
Yeah.
that way, you know.
It didn't seem as daunting as an experienced person would look at it.
We just went and, as JP said, you grabbed a little piece and then you move the ball another first down and then another first down until eventually.
Until you get it done. I mean,
Yeah,
you have
and
to
we
have some
won, I think,
patience.
by 1 or 2 votes finally at
Yeah.
the end of it, even though we had a supermajority in the House and the Senate at that time.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is. It really is. There are a lot of little success stories that nobody ever knows about.
So, one thing I'd like to find out about the markers that are being
Ah.
placed along, like the communist marker. Who put it up? Who took it down? And are there more of those around? And who decides what they put up or why it's important?
Tell me about these markers.
Okay, so this came to me. This is indicative of how a lot of things happen as a representative. At our local school board, a fellow came over and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Remember I told you about the Andrew Jackson marker that was in Bow coming into Concord?" And I said, "Yeah, vaguely." And he said, "I've been working on that for this year." This is that road, those roadside, they're usually green with white lettering that tell you
Oh,
something,
I gotcha.
something monumental happened at this
Something
site.
happened here, yeah.
So there is one there. He pointed out to me as the Andrew Jackson one that when Andrew Jackson came
Right. So
to
not a lot of
Concord,
people like Andrew Jackson, but
and suddenly Andrew Jackson's sign is gone, and he didn't like that. So he started filing 91As and trying to find out where it was and why was it somewhere else, and kept getting the runaround and finally he
it's all about
This
this
yeah.
is erasing history.
it's rewriting it if not erasing it. Yeah. So he gave me this list of the
Look at their comments.
the high priority ones and the medium priority ones, and it turns out this is not by any stretch a partisan thing. Some of the monuments that are in the towns or the markers that are in towns that are purely held by Democrats at this point, their markers are going away too. In some cases because the language is inflammatory or the language isn't fully vetted or perhaps it was
So, is the legislative even involved with this? Do they-
no.
So
as it turns
anybody
out.
could do this. Like if I want to put a statue of Josh up somewhere.
No,
they
that's
could-
a problem.
Oh, okay.
That's a problem.
great.
Yeah.
I tried.
Yeah. No.
So give us a little background on how that works. Then.
Yeah, so I'm learning that part as well for the newly established ones. What I'm working on here are the existing ones, and there's I think about 27 or 28 that are on the chopping block or on the watch list of ones that they feel aren't using appropriate language or something along those lines.
So when you say they don't think it's appropriate, who are they? I mean, is it a town?
No, it's a state agency, Department of Historic Monuments. It's listed on the top of that letter there. They are the ones that were involved in that the communist marker
we're
in
not
Concord.
going to mark when a president visited the state because the wording was too flowery and nationalistic. Because there's no mention of Andrew Jackson's controversial history with Native Americans. Wait a minute. Every president all the way up to the 1900s had a controversial history with the Native Americans because we were constantly at odds with them. I mean, to this day, we still have issues on Native American reservations. Like.
Well, that's crazy talk, though. That's just crazy talk.
All right,
You've got to refine yourself.
A marker memorializing when the town of Nottingham was charted in 1722, retired because it's one-sided, lack of context, racially insensitive. How is it racially insensitive? Like what?
You're asking.
Welcome back, Josh.
This is the part that. So I was handed this and said, so what am I going to do with it? Today I filed an amendment to add to a bill because it's too late to file bills now. So I found a bill that's dealing with this same
issue.
Government agency, state agency, and so I filed an amendment to add on to one of their bills that is in the Senate under ED&A with Senator Pearl and Senator Avard and Pearl, and ask them so that anytime they're going to change any of these things, they have to get legislative approval.
Absolutely. Like,
So is this
are they
inside
going to go
baseball
after the Pine Tree Riot too? Like,
Probably. That had to be.
The four they've already done are right in that
This one.
list. Those
These
are
are
the
the
four.
four. Andrew
One was
Jackson.
the Oyster River massacre. So there's some fodder there to get your blood moving in the morning. But it all, if this fellow hadn't tapped me on the shoulder at the school board meeting, I wouldn't have known this was going on. I would have said there used to be a sign here, but
What happened to it?
what happened to it?
No, but there was one recently. There was one that was memorializing, or they were going to put up this memorializing a communist.
That was
Right.
already, they put it up.
And then
And nobody knew it was up, apparently. Or they knew, but not the right people knew it was up.
it's been
It's been removed.
removed.
But nobody would own up to who put it up. Remember that?
Yeah,
That was it's in here.
Yeah, see, they do. In fact, in the amendment, there is the procedure already in law of,
So
of
what
how
happens
they
if
work with
somebody
DOT
does
to
that
make.
on the sly? Like we've got to find them and say, no, you can't just put up a marker like
Well,
that.
the DOT handles that. DOT make sure you're putting the marker in an appropriate place and the right distance from the.
But what if I just buy a sign and I sink it into the ground at 2 a.m. myself?
Well, my guess is you don't want to be doing that on broadcast national television.
I didn't say I was going to do it. What I'm asking is about these.
That would be my
no one
first
has actually
step.
owned up to putting up this communist marker, right? So if no one's owned up to it, is that what happened? Did somebody just?
Yeah, truthfully, I haven't followed that. I knew it would be taken care of at some point. In relation to this, I did see where I put the amendment added was in the language that handled that communist.
So
and
it
who
came, you said the Senate now has this?
The Senate has
You
the House
added to
bill,
it, okay.
and I added, or I've offered this amendment if they are willing to pick it up and run with it. I think they should. As I said, it's a nonpartisan issue.
Right.
I think I gave you Marjorie Smith's letter
Yep.
that basically is saying you don't have the ability to do this.
Yeah.
I don't find anything in the statutes or in rules that say that you are able to do this. So
Yeah, she's
why
talking
are you
about
doing it?
Yeah, historic marker reviews and things like that.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
So I suspect, I'm hopeful that Marjorie's influence will let this
help.
go through. I also, we're in a little bit of a difficult spot because this is an executive branch agency. It's not the legislature. So in truth, it should be the governor's office that says, hey, stop this.
Absolutely. You know, we talk about the whole woke business that's been going on for the last 7 or 8 years. Or it's been going on for the last 30 years or 40 years, but it's just reached this crescendo in the last couple of years, where everything's getting canceled if it's even remotely insensitive or remotely offensive to anyone, right? And that's been going on long enough. We're actually on the cusp of turning the corner here because people are getting tired of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
and
that's
if people
what
are
this
getting
guy
tired
was.
of it, that's what we need to do is stop it before it goes any further. Because we really are getting tired of it. And if we can get this into the hands of the legislature and say, okay, you don't put up or take down a historical marker unless it goes through the proper channels.
Right.
You don't just have a single agency whose appointed head just gets it in their head that they're gonna make these changes. That's not why we appoint you the head of a particular government agency. You don't single-handedly go off and start making policy on historical marker history. You don't start rewriting history because you were just appointed to this position by a partisan governor or whatnot, right? So, but we are, as a nation, we're on the cusp of making that turn because we're seeing everybody get sick of it. We're seeing a lot of corporations pulling out of this
Bud Light.
ESG and all of this stuff. Everybody's reversing. There are some, or down in Florida, they passed a law and said, no, you're not going to use government money for this, for woke hiring and whatnot. And all of these companies all of a sudden decided as long as they're not getting government money, they fired their entire
DEI group.
DEI
Yeah.
organizations.
Right.
Companies are firing their DEI employees because the only reason they exist is because of government money. And if the government money stops, then the companies who are in the business of making money say, well, I don't need you to tell me who the best person is for this job. I can find that person. Right? Because even that was becoming insensitive to say that you're hiring the best person for the job as opposed to considering skin color or ethnicity or gender, right? One of the 23
looked
genders.
at,
But we're making that turn and we're seeing...
I hope you're right.
We're seeing the stock market pull out of this ESG, DSI business. We're seeing corporations, large corporations, saying, no, we're done with it. We're not playing that game. It didn't work. We're getting, you know... Boeing's about to have planes falling out of the sky because of their DEI, right? And
Some
so,
truth to that.
we're turning that corner, and this is good. This is good.
I think
Get it under control before it gets out of hand here.
Well, 4 have already gone, so you can say, you know, the horse is out of the barn.
They can come back.
Well, they're out for repair.
My very honestly, my very first book report that I ever did in the 2nd grade, you know what it was on? Andrew
Bruins.
Jackson. Andrew
was it?
Jackson.
Oh,
It was
really?
literally Andrew Jackson. So that's why that it really makes me mad. I remember this.
I don't think it had anything to do with your book
I don't
report.
think it had anything to do with my
was the-
book report. I wrote my book report in Virginia. It wasn't up here, but
No, it is an important thing. I bring it up more from the standpoint of this is where good ideas come from. Sometimes it's just someone tapping you on the shoulder, and it irritated him enough
To bring it to
that
you.
he thought, you know, I don't know where to take it. I don't know what to do with it, but here.
yeah. Why are these things disappearing? That's
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing we've tried to
Maddening.
stress on the show, too, is we always tell people, you know, that we have somebody on here now that may be able to help you with something, or we ask the person on the show, what do you need help with? How can the public help you, and can they show up to testify? And
Gee, I wish I was here. I worked a couple of weeks ago on the lobbying bill.
Oh, right.
We were trying to, and that might have been what I had
that
talked to
could
you
have been,
about.
yeah.
I was trying to figure out a way that we could make it so that some of the money that you spend in taxes doesn't get used against you when you get to Concord. To come, you know, you take time off from work and you come in because some issue irritates you, and then you find out that someone who is paid to be there argues against you, and then you find out that he's being paid with your own tax money.
Right.
Yeah.
That tends to
that
throw
was it,
people
I
off.
think. Yeah.
That bill got killed, but it would have been great to have some more support from the
Sometimes
the
just
public.
getting it up there to get killed gets a lot of people
Well,
thinking.
well, yeah. Although, and as JP knows, sometimes when you're up against strong organizations, money like lobbyists, it isn't always a fair fight. They don't. It isn't a case that you walk into the room and both people tell the truth, and the right answer comes out. Sometimes one side comes in and
Overwhelmed.
throws
Yep.
every I'll say lie, every lie possible, and everyone will then vote against you. So.
It feels like that's their tactic. That's been their
Sure.
tactic. Is we're going to put up so many lies that even if you're prepared for half of them, we still got a whole bunch that you weren't prepared for, and you can't immediately discount them in committee. You have to go and research it to discount them later
Yeah.
on, and by then it's too late.
Yeah,
Right.
There are more times that you'll see someone come back from the well after speaking and say, you know, I may have changed 5 votes, but there's just overwhelming odds that you just can't win.
I think it's so, pardon me, it's still important to have that person go to the well knowing that they can't possibly win enough votes to win, to just let it get out there that there is another side, and it's not all about one
Right.
party. You know, you have to get some of these things passed, you have to have the other side with you. It makes it easier if you can get them to agree to something, right, on a bill, to co-sponsor a bill even. If you can get to that point, it makes it a little bit easier. But there are many times you get up there and you're saying, I can remember Gary going up a couple of times, and he'd come back and say, I don't know why I did that. I guess just to keep awake, I needed to walk, you know?
Yeah.
But there's truth to that, though, yeah.
Very few times do bills the first time pass, and so sometimes you do just need to inch that ball a little
get
further
People
down
thinking
that
about
field.
it, get people talking
Yep.
about it, even if it doesn't pass. And some other people may have some better ideas, right? Say,
Yeah,
hey, I
they
voted
could.
against that, but I got this idea that I can help you next time.
I've been fighting the lobster bill for
Forever.
forever. All I want to do is to let divers be able to access the same way they do crabs. I think they should be able to go down and catch lobsters with their hands, barehanded like real men. Every other state
Oh,
except here
there's-
in Maine can do that,
Yeah,
but you can't here.
There's a huge lobster lobby.
I'm
Oh,
aware. But here's what we did that I thought was
But even though there's such a huge, I mean, they obviously want to protect their fishing rights and whatnot and their fishing grounds. But even the U.S. lobster fishermen, they're at a huge disadvantage competing because Canada does not have the same rules and they fish the same waters. And so Canada can get bigger lobsters. They can get slightly smaller lobsters. And so when I tell my wife, you see a lobster that's like a 2.5 pound lobster, that's not a Maine lobster. They may call it a Maine lobster because it was caught in the Gulf of Maine, but that is a Canadian lobster. That was caught by a Canadian fisherman. You're not supporting Canadian fishermen when you're getting these huge lobsters. But so they're competing with all kinds of other forces in addition to these divers. But I honestly don't think divers, there's not enough people who are diving.
Right.
To make a difference.
Right, because you're diving, you're one person grabbing things off the seafloor from here as opposed to a vessel that has literally hundreds of traps going hundreds if not thousands of yards across.
Right.
They're covering a harvesting field that a diver cannot cover. So but the fight is still there.
Absolutely. Right? And they think every time you go under, they think that you're taking them out of their traps because they can't prove
because
otherwise.
They can't see, right?
But
I used to know a diver, or I went to Maine Maritime Academy. We all learned to scuba dive. That was our PE class. So we all learned to scuba dive. And this one fellow, Jake, he would go diving for mussels and whatnot. And while he was out there diving for mussels, he would see a lobster trap. And he says, yeah, I just stuffed it full of lobsters for the guy. He would take the.
He would help the guy.
he would help the lobster fisherman just because he was there.
Sure.
He's like, oh.
It is hard to do. So, these things they hurt. I can show you some scars. They hurt. But what we had done this year was added it to or merged it with the environmental concern, because there are thousands of traps that are still in the waters out off of the New Hampshire coast that aren't attached to a surface buoy.
Right.
And
they got cut and
whatever.
Territorial issues between lobster fishermen. No, it happens.
There are thousands of them.
Yep.
And what happens is the lobsters still go in there. The lobster dies because he can't get out, and then he becomes bait for the next lobsters to go in. So you would think the people that are interested in the continuation of the industry would want these things out of the water that are only killing more and more, and they don't care what size they are. They don't care if they're breeders. They don't care any of that.
Yep.
They wouldn't let anyone come in to even identify them.
How would you do that type of cleanup? What type of vessel?
So Maine
has
Maine has a tremendous situation. A guy named Buzz Scott.
You got the name right.
That name, yeah.
You got the last name right.
Buzz Scott has.
Of course, we don't know whether it's true, but we'll
no, it was quick though.
It was quick. Go ahead.
Buzz Scott has divers in the water, and they will latch on a surface buoy, and then some of the volunteer lobstermen come behind and will hook it up and pull it up, and then they set those traps aside. So the other benefit is the lobstermen get their traps back.
Right.
You know, some of them aren't damaged. Some of them are still usable. And $60, $70, $80, whatever they are, they get it back for free. Why wouldn't they?
They all have a tag on them.
So if Maine can do it, why do we get such pushback from New Hampshire? And you can't believe the amount of false information, outright lies. We've been told that none of these traps in the New Hampshire waters are New Hampshire traps, because New Hampshire lobstermen don't lose traps. They come from Canada. And yet we will show them the color 8 by 10, 8 by 12 pictures with the name tag that says the lobsterman's name on it and the date that he had it, and it's right, and he's the New Hampshire lobsterman that's sitting in the audience, you know. A.J. Marconi is one of them. Gino Marconi is the head of the Pease trade port. So it's his kid's strap, you know, sitting right there, and we can't get that passed. Just to clean up traps, we can't clean.
Really?
That's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, you want to see frustration.
What are the arguments against it?
As soon as it's a slippery slope. As soon as the
forget about
diver
divers
touches
harvesting lobsters, but divers cleaning up traps. What's the argument against that?
While you're in there, you're going to take lobsters of theirs. You may even, because you're so angry at the lobstermen, you may even cut the trap lines and leave them in there. You can now. But they're just against a diver anywhere near their traps,
Even if their traps are lost forever.
even if they're lobsters.
That makes no sense.
I'm telling you, walk away from the well after having that speech and you say,
Yeah, try that one.
I just don't get it. Why aren't you able to get the PETA organization or somebody
gonna
else
say,
to
why
say,
can't you get
look,
one of-
you're killing thousands of animals every year, thousands, because they can't get out. We have pictures of fish stuck in these traps that can't get out, and they're just becoming the bait for the next batch that are going to go in there and can't get out. It's remarkable, but it's underwater, and so no one cares.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, well, if hunters were bringing up Shaw's shopping carts to the White Mountains and leaving them there, then it would be a big, huge issue, I think. But somehow we don't have this problem here. I don't know. It's a frustrating place. I think we've got that down.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the things. There was a couple of people on the other side who I will not name, even though I know their names, that every time they got up to speak, we'd go back in the ante room.
Well, only because in a lot of cases, you've heard the argument.
Yeah, over and over again.
And no minds are going to be changed, and yet they feel compelled
Yeah,
to.
I mean, you're right, though. You might occasionally get a vote that you didn't know you had, but for the most part, when you sit down and you've read the bill over, you got a pretty good idea how you're going to vote.
Yeah.
Even before they get up and speak. And it would take something special to change your mind. At least it did for me.
Terry Roy, chair of criminal justice,
Yep.
has done it a couple of times this year. I've come in thinking I was going to vote one way, and Terry has given me a piece of information.
Very persuasive
Well,
person.
just gave me a piece of information
You
that I
didn't have.
didn't know, and that gave me enough of a reason that I could go his way. He's good at it. There's not many. There's not many Terry Roys. Tom
True.
Walsh is another one.
Yeah.
Tom Walsh
Yep.
is really good about giving things. These two bills that are very controversial now on accessory dwelling units and working on the housing or so-called housing, lack of affordable housing. Those two bills are hugely supported, but the answers on the other side seem compelling to me, so I'm on the wrong side of that one, I guess. But I think that's one of those cases that if you just listen to the argument, you'll go a different way. Anyway.
No, I have a I guess I would have to hear the argument on the low-income housing or affordable housing is what they want to call it. There are so many reasons why that term just rubs me the wrong way, because they say, okay, well, we need affordable housing because the landlords keep raising the rent. Well, the landlords raise the rent because their taxes go up, or because their mortgage goes up, right? Landlord, I can't afford to be a landlord anymore, so I'm going to sell the property. Well, the new property owner's got to take out a mortgage at the new, higher, better, increased mortgage rates under the Biden administration. So he's got a higher mortgage rate than the previous landowner, and he's got a higher tax rate, right? And then you've got these towns like Manchester, who are basically giving the school board carte blanche to raise school taxes, right? The school board has that ability without a vote, they can say, oh, well, we need this, so we need to raise the taxes. And so you've got taxes going out of control. I have a hard time blaming the landlord for the rent going up a couple of $100.
Well,
right?
and also he's got to
then,
repair some things in there, and what's
right,
the cost
he's got
of
to
building
have-
materials these days?
If he doesn't have a stash of money hanging around and your washer and dryer goes or your heater goes or your furnace goes, what are you going to do? Are you going to blame the landlord when that can't afford to replace the furnace? Well, he needs that money. So I have a hard time blaming the landlords on that, especially the single unit landlords. But then we go through this process of, and we see it here in downtown Manchester, of building a whole bunch of new apartment buildings. These are going to be, new
Section
affordable
8, yeah.
housing. As a builder, I'm building a brand new building, going through all of the latest environmental regulations, all the regulatory issues that need to go into place
Permitting,
that are
yep.
costing me tens of thousands of dollars more
Upfront.
than building an apartment building 20 years ago. I've got to build this apartment building. I've got to pay all of the current material prices that are through the roof. I've got to, right. So,
Yep.
so when that building is done and it's supposed to be affordable housing, it's still not going to be affordable housing. They're building a couple hundred units down there in middle of Goffstown, and a 2-bedroom unit is going to go for $3,700 a month. A 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Goffstown.
Oh, jeez.
Right? They announced the price. It's 2-bedroom apartment for $3,700. That's twice my mortgage.
John Burt's going to bring in
Tell me,
rumors for that. Don't say it too loud.
don't tell me about building new affordable housing. I don't understand how you can build a new building or force a landlord to. It's not economically viable unless you start ripping money out of the taxpayer's pocket to subsidize it.
These bills
And
are going to rip more.
That's what I don't like.
Out of the taxpayer, because they're going to require.
2 minutes.
They're going to require the ability for somebody to put accessory dwelling units, or actually single-family homes, on that same
Yeah.
lot, and somebody has to